Section 13, Letters 61 to 65. Letter the 61st. Cécile Volanges to Sophie Carnay.
My dear Sophie, pity your Cécile, your poor Cécile. She is very unhappy. Mamma knows all. I cannot conceive how she has come to suspect anything, and yet she has discovered everything. Yesterday evening, Mamma seemed indeed to be in a bad humour, but I did not pay much attention to it. I even, whilst waiting till her rubber was finished, talked quite gaily to Madame de Merteuil, who had supped here, and we spoke much of Danceny. I do not believe, however, that we were overheard. She went away, and I retired to my room. I was undressing when Mamma entered, and I sent away my maid. She asked me for the key of my desk. The tone in which she made this request caused me to tremble, so that I could hardly stand. I made a pretence of being unable to find it, but at last I had to obey her. The first drawer which she opened was precisely that which contained the letters of the Chevalier Danceny. I was so confused that when she asked me what it was, I did not know what to reply to her, except that it was nothing. But when I saw her begin to read the first which presented itself, I had barely time to sink into an armchair when I felt so ill that I swooned away. As soon as I came to myself again, my mother, who had called my maid, withdrew, telling me to go to bed. She carried off all Danceny's letters. I tremble every time I reflect that I must appear before her again. I did naught but weep all the night through. I write to you at dawn, in the hope that Josephine will come. If I can speak with her alone, I shall ask her to take a short note that I am going to write to Madame de Merteuil. If not, I will put it in your letter, and will you kindly send it as if from yourself? It is only from her that I shall get any consolation. At least we can speak of him, for I have no hope to see him again. I am very wretched. Perhaps she will be kind enough to take charge of a letter for Danceny. I dare not trust Josephine for such a purpose, and still less my maid, for it is perhaps she who told my mother that I had letters in my desk. I will not write to you at any greater length, because I wish to have time to write to Madame de Merteuil and also to Danceny, to have my letter all ready, if she will take charge of it. After that I shall lie down again, so that they will find me in bed when they come into my room. I shall say that I am ill, so that I need not have to visit Mamma. It will not be a great falsehood, for indeed I suffer more than if I had the fever. My eyes burn from excessive weeping, and I have a weight on my chest which hinders me from breathing. When I think that I shall not see Danceny again, I wish that I were dead. Adieu, my dear Sophie. I can say no more to you. My tears choke me. Paris, 7th of September, 17.
Letter the 62nd. Note: we have suppressed the letter of Cécile Volanges to the Marquise, as it contained merely the same facts as the preceding letter, but with less detail. That to the Chevalier Danceny has not been recovered. The reason of this will appear in letter the 63rd, from Madame de Merteuil to the Vicomte. Madame de Volanges to the Chevalier Danceny. After having abused, monsieur, a mother's confidence and the innocence of a child, you will doubtless not be surprised if you are no longer received in a house where you have responded to the marks of a most sincere friendship by a forgetfulness of all that is fitting. I prefer to beg you not to call upon me again than to give orders at the door, which would compromise all alike by the remarks which the lackeys would not fail to make. I have a right to hope that you will not force me to have recourse to such a means. I warn you also that if you make in future the least attempt to support my daughter in the folly into which you have beguiled her, an austere and eternal retreat shall shelter her from your pursuit. It is for you to decide, monsieur, whether you will shrink as little from being the cause of her misery as you have from attempting her dishonour. As for me, my choice is made, and I have acquainted her with it. You will find enclosed the packet containing your letters. I reckon upon you to send me in return all those of my daughter, and to do your utmost to leave no trace of an incident the memory of which I could not retain without indignation, she without shame, and you without remorse. I have the honor to be, etc. Paris, 7th of September, 1700. Letter the 63rd. The Marquise de Merteuil to the Vicomte de Valmont.
Indeed, yes, I will explain Danceny*s letter to you. The incident which caused him to write it is my handiwork, and it is, I think, my chef d'oeuvre. I wasted no time since your last letter, and I said with the Athenian architect, "What he has said, I will do." It is obstacles, then, that this fine hero of romance needs, and he slumbers in felicity. Oh, let him look to me, and I will give him some work, and if his slumber is going to be peaceful any longer, I am mistaken. Indeed, he had to be taught the value of time, and I flatter myself that by now he is regretting all he has lost. It were well also, said you, that he had need of more mystery. Well, that need won't be lacking him now. I have this quality, that my mistakes have only to be pointed out to me, then I take no repose until I have retrieved them. Let me tell you now what I did. When I returned home in the morning of the day before yesterday, I read your letter. I found it luminous. Convinced that you had put your finger on the cause of the evil, my sole concern now was to find a means of curing it. I commenced, however, by retiring to bed, for the indefatigable Chevalier had not let me sleep a moment, and I thought I was sleepy. But not at all. Absorbed in Danceny, my desire to cure him of his indolence, or to punish him for it, did not let me close an eye, and it was only after I had thoroughly completed my plan that I could take 2 hours' rest. I went that same evening to Madame de Volanges, and, according to my project, I told her confidentially that I felt sure a dangerous intimacy existed between her daughter and Danceny. This woman, who sees so clearly in your case, was so blind that she answered me at first that I was certainly mistaken, that her daughter was a child, etc., etc. I could not tell her all I knew, but I quoted certain looks and remarks whereat my virtue and my friendship had taken alarm. In short, I spoke almost as well as a devote would have done, and to strike the decisive blow, I went so far as to say that I thought I had seen a letter given and received. That reminds me, I added, one day she opened before me a drawer in her desk, in which I saw a number of papers which she doubtless preserves. Do you know if she has any frequent correspondence? Here Madame de Volanges' face changed, and I saw some tears rise to her eyes. "I thank you, my dear friend," she said, as she pressed my hand. "I will clear this up." After this conversation, which was too short to excite suspicion, I went over to the young person. I left her soon afterwards to beg her mother not to compromise me in her daughter's eyes. She promised me this the more willingly when I pointed out to her how fortunate it would be if the child were to take sufficient confidence in me to open her heart to me, and thus afford me the occasion of giving her my wise counsels. I feel certain that she will keep her promise, because she will doubtless seek to vaunt her penetration in her daughter's eyes. Thus I am authorized to maintain my friendly tone towards the child, without seeming false to Madame de Volanges, which I wished to avoid. I have also gained for the future the right to be as long and as privately as I like with the young person, without the mother being able to take umbrage. I took advantage of this that very evening, and when my game was over, I took the child aside in a corner, and set her on the subject of Danceny, upon which she is inexhaustible. I amused myself by exciting her with the pleasure she will have when she sees him to-morrow. There is no kind of folly that I did not make her say. I needs must restore to her in hope what I had deprived her of in reality, and besides, all that ought to render the blow more forcible, and I am persuaded that, the more she suffers, the greater will be her haste to compensate herself for it on the next occasion. 'Tis wise, moreover, to accustom to great events any one whom one desires for great adventures. After all, may she not pay for the pleasure of having her Danceny with a few tears? She dotes on him. Well, I promise her that she shall have him, and even sooner than she would have done, but for this storm. It is like a bad dream, the awakening from which will be delicious, and, considering all, I think she owes me gratitude. After all, if I have put a spice of malice into it, one must amuse oneself. Les sots sont ici-bas pour nos menus plaisirs.
Note, Gresset, le méchant.
I withdrew at last, thoroughly satisfied with myself. Either, said I to myself, Danceny's love, excited by obstacles, will redouble in intensity, and then I shall serve him with all my power, or, if he is nothing but a fool, as I am sometimes tempted to believe, he will be in despair, and will look upon himself as beaten. Now, in that case, I shall at least have been as well avenged on him as he has been on me. On my way I shall have increased the mother's esteem for me, the daughter's friendship, and the confidence of both. As for Gercourt, the first object of my care, I should be very unlucky, or very clumsy, if, mistress over his bride's mind as I am, and as I intend to be even more, I did not find 1,000 ways of making him what I means him to be. I went to bed with these pleasant thoughts. I slept well, too, and awoke very late. On my awakening I found 2 letters, one from the mother and one from the daughter, and I could not refrain from laughing when I encountered in both literally this same phrase, "It is from you alone that I expect any consolation." Is it not amusing to console for and against, and to be the single agent of 2 directly contrary interests? Behold me, like the divinity, receiving the diverse petitions of blind mortals, and altering nothing in my immutable decrees. I have deserted that august part, however, to assume that of the consoling angel, and have been, as the precept bids us, to visit my friends in their affliction. I began with the mother. I found her wrapped in a sadness which already avenges you in part for the obstacles she has thrown in your way on the side of your fair Prude. Everything has succeeded marvellously, and my only anxiety was lest Madame de Volanges should take advantage of the moment to gain her daughter's confidence, which would have been quite easy had she employed with her the language of kindness and affection, and given to reasonable counsels the air and tone of indulgent tenderness. Luckily she had armed herself with severity. In short, she had behaved so unwisely that I could only applaud. It is true that she thought of frustrating all our schemes by the course which she had resolved on of sending her daughter back to the convent, but I warded off this blow, and induced her merely to make a threat of it, in the event of Danceny continuing his pursuit, this in order to compel both to a circumspection which I believe necessary to success. I next went to the daughter. You would not believe how grief improves her. If she does but take to coquetry, I warrant that she will be often weeping, but this time she wept in all sincerity. Struck by this new charm, which I had not known in her, and which I was very pleased to observe, I gave her at first but clumsy consolations, which rather increased her sorrow than assuaged it, and by this means I brought her well nigh to choking point. She wept no more, and for a moment I was afraid of convulsions. I advised her to go to bed, to which she agreed. I served her for waiting-maid. She had made no toilette, and soon her dishevelled hair was falling over her shoulders and bosom, which were entirely bare. I embraced her, she abandoned herself in my arms, and her tears began to flow again without an effort. Lord, how beautiful she was! Ah, if the Magdalene was like that, she must have been far more dangerous in her penitence than when she sinned. When the disconsolate fair one was in bed, I started to console her in good faith. I first reassured her as to her fear about the convent. I excited a hope in her of seeing Danceny in secret, and, sitting upon the bed, "If he was here," said I, then, embroidering on this theme, I led her from distraction to distraction until she had quite forgotten her affliction. We should have separated in a complete satisfaction with one another, if she had not wished to charge me with a letter to Danceny, which I consistently refused. Here are my reasons for this, which you will doubtless approve. To begin with, it would have been to compromise myself openly with Danceny, and though this was the only reason I could employ with the little one, there are plenty of others which hold between you and me. Would it not have been to risk the fruit of my labours to give our young people so soon a means so easy of lightening their pains? And then I should not be sorry to compel them to induce some servants into the adventure, for if it is to work out well, which is what I hope for, it must become known immediately after the marriage, and there are few surer moments of publishing it. Or if by a miracle the servants were not to speak, we would speak ourselves, and it will be more convenient to lay the indiscretion on their account. You must give this idea, then, to-day to Danceny, and as I am not sure of the waiting-maid of the little Volanges, and she seems to distrust her herself, suggest my own to him, my faithful Victoire. I will take care that the enterprise is successful. This idea pleases me all the most, as the confidence will only be useful to us, and not to them, for I am not at the end of my story. Whilst I was excusing myself from carrying the child's letter, I was afraid every moment that she would suggest that I should send it by the post, which I could hardly have refused to do. Luckily, either in her confusion or in her ignorance, or again because she was less set on her letter than on a reply to it, which she could not have obtained by this means, she did not speak of it to me. But, to prevent this idea coming to her, or at least her being able to use it, I made up my mind on the spot, and, on returning to her mother, persuaded her to send her daughter away from some time, to take her to the country. And where? Does not your heart beat with joy? To your aunt, to the old Rosemonde. She is to apprise her of it to-day, so behold you authorized to return to your Puritan, who will no longer be able to reproach you with the scandal of a tête-à-tête, and, thanks to my pains, Madame de Volanges will herself repair the wrong she has done you. But listen to me, and do not be so constantly wrapped up in your own affairs as to lose sight of this one. Remember that I am interested in it. I want you to become the go-between and counsellor of the two young people. Inform Danceny of this journey, and offer him your services. Find no difficulty, except as to getting your letter of credit into the fair one's hands, and demolish this obstacle on the spot by suggesting to him the services of my waiting-maid. There is no doubt but that he will accept, and you will have as reward for your trouble the confidence of a young heart, which is always interesting. Poor child, how she will blush when she hands you her first letter! In truth, this rôle of confidante, against which a sort of prejudice has grown up, seems to me a very pretty relaxation when you are occupied elsewhere, and that is the case in which you will be. It is upon your attention that the dénouement of this intrigue will depend. Judge the moment when the actors must be reunited. The country offers 1,000 ways, and Danceny cannot fail to be ready at your first signal. A night, a disguise, a window? What do I know? But mark me, if the little girl comes back as she went away, I shall quarrel with you. If you consider that she has need of any encouragement from me, send word to me. I think I have given her such a good lesson on the danger of keeping letters that I may venture to write to her now, and I still cherish the design of making her my pupil. I believe I forgot to tell you that her suspicions with regard to the surprised correspondence fell at first upon her waiting-maid, but that I turned them towards the confessor. That was a way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Adieu, Vicomte. I have been writing to you a long time now, and my dinner is the later for it. But self-love and friendship dictated my letter, and both are garrulous. For the rest, I will be with you by 3 o'clock, and that is all you need. Pity me now, if you dare, and go to visit the woods of the Comte de B, if they tempt you. You say that he keeps them for the pleasure of his friends. Is the man a friend of all the world, then? But adieu, I am hungry. Paris, 9th September, 17...
Letter the 64th. The Chevalier Danceny to Madame de Volanges. A draft enclosed in letter the 66th from the Vicomte to the Marquise.
Without seeking, madam, to justify my conduct, and without complaining of yours, I cannot but grieve at an event which brings unhappiness to 3 persons, all 3 worthier of a happier fate. More sensible to the grief of being the cause of it than even to that of being its victim, I have tried frequently, since yesterday, to have the honour to write to you, without being able to find the strength. I have, however, so many things to say to you that I must make a great effort over myself, and if this letter has little order and sequence, you must be sufficiently sensible of my painful situation to grant me some indulgence. Permit me, first, to protest against the first sentence of your letter. I venture to say that I have abused neither your confidence nor the innocence of Mademoiselle de Volanges. In my actions I respected both. These alone depended on me, and when you would render me responsible for an involuntary sentiment, I am not afraid to add that that which Mademoiselle, your daughter, has inspired in me is of a kind which may be displeasing to you, but cannot offend you. Upon this subject, which touches me more than I can say, I wish for no other judge than you and my letters for my witnesses. You forbid me to present myself at your house in future, and doubtless I shall submit to everything which it shall please you to order on this subject, but will not this sudden and total absence give as much cause for the remarks which you would avoid, as the order which, for that very same reason, you did not wish to leave at your door? I insist all the more on this point, in that it is far more important for Mademoiselle de Volanges than for me. I beg you then to weigh everything attentively, and not to permit your severity to lessen your prudence. Persuaded that the simple interest of Mademoiselle, your daughter, will dictate your resolves, I shall await fresh orders from you. Meanwhile, in case you should permit me to pay you my court sometimes, I undertake, madam, and you can count on my promise, not to abuse the opportunity by attempting to speak privately with Mademoiselle de Volanges, or to send any letter to her. The fear of compromising her reputation decides me to this sacrifice, and the happiness of sometimes seeing her will be my reward. This paragraph of my letter is also the only reply that I can make to what you tell me as to the fate you reserve for Mademoiselle de Volanges, and which you would make dependent on my conduct. I should deceive you were I to promise you more. A vile seducer can adapt his plans to circumstances and calculate upon events, but the love which animates me permits me only 2 sentiments, courage, and constancy. What? I consent to be forgotten by Mademoiselle de Volanges? To forget her myself? No, no, never. I will be faithful to her. She has received my vow, and I renew it this day. Forgive me, madam, I am losing myself. I must return. There remains one other matter to discuss with you, that of the letters which you demand from me. I am truly pained to have to add a refusal to the wrongs which you already accuse me of, but I beg you, listen to my reasons, and deign to remember, in order to appreciate them, that the only consolation of my unhappiness at having lost your friendship is the hope of retaining your esteem. The letters of Mademoiselle de Volanges, always so precious to me, have become doubly so at present. They are the solitary good thing which remains to me. They alone retrace for me a sentiment which is all the charm of life to me. However, you may believe me, I should not hesitate an instant in making the sacrifice, and my regret at being deprived of them would yield to my desire of proving to you my respectful deference. But considerations more powerful restrain me, and I assure you that you yourself cannot blame me for them. You have, it is true, the secret of Mademoiselle de Volanges, but permit me to say that I am authorized to believe it is the result of surprise and not of confidence. I do not pretend to blame a proceeding which is, perhaps, authorized by maternal solicitude. I respect your rights, but they do not extend so far as to dispense me from my duties. The most sacred of all is never to betray the confidence which is entrusted to you. It would be to fail in this, to expose to the eyes of another the secrets of a heart which did but wish to reveal them to mine. If Mademoiselle your daughter consents to confide them to you, let her speak. Her letters are of no use to you. If she wishes, on the contrary, to lock her secret within herself, you doubtless cannot expect me to be the person to instruct you. As for the mystery in which you desire this incident to be buried, rest assured, madam, that in all that concerns Mademoiselle de Volanges, I can rival even a mother's heart. To complete my work of removing all cause of anxiety from you, I have foreseen everything. This precious deposit, which bore hitherto the inscription "Papers to be burned," carries now the words "Papers belonging to Madame de Volanges." The course which I have taken should prove to you also that my refusal does not refer to any fear that you might find in these letters one single sentiment with which you could personally find fault. This, madam, is indeed a long letter. It will not have been long enough if it leaves you the least doubt as to the honesty of my sentiments, my very sincere regret at having displeased you, and the profound respect with which I have the honour to be, etc. Paris, 9th of September, in 17...
Letter the 65th. The Chevalier d'Ancenis to Cécile Volanges. Sent open to the Marquise de Merteuil, in letter the 66th, from the Vicomte.
Oh, my Cécile, what is to become of us? What God will save us from the misfortunes which threaten us? Let love at least give us a courage to support them. How can I paint for you my astonishment, my despair at the sight of my letters, at the reading of Madame de Volanges' missive? Who can have betrayed us? On whom do your suspicions fall? Could you have committed any imprudence? What are you doing now? What have they said to you? I would know everything, and I am ignorant of all. Perhaps you yourself are no better informed than I. I send you your mamma's note and a copy of my reply. I hope that you will approve of what I have said. I need also your approval of all the measures I have taken since this fatal event. They are all with the object of having news of you, of giving you mine, and, who knows, perhaps of seeing you again, and more freely than ever. Imagine, my Cécile, the pleasure of finding ourselves together again, of being able to seal anew our vows of eternal love, and of seeing in our eyes, of feeling in our souls, that this vow will not be falsified? What pain will not so sweet a moment make us forget? Ah, well, I have hope of seeing it arrive, and I owe it to these same measures which I beg you to approve. What am I saying? I owe it to the consoling care of the most tender of friends, and my sole request is that you will permit this friend to become also your own. Perhaps I ought not to have given your confidence away without your consent, but I had misfortune and necessity for my excuse. It is love which has guided me. It is that which claims your indulgence, which begs you to pardon a confidence that was necessary, and without which we should, perhaps, have been separated forever.
Note: Monsieur Danceny does not confess the truth. He had already given his confidence to Monsieur de Valmont before this event. See letter the 57th.
You know the friend of whom I speak. He is the friend of the woman whom you love best. It is the Vicomte de Valmont. My plan in addressing him was, at first, to beg him to induce Madame de Merteuil to take charge of a letter for you. He did not think this method could succeed, but, in default of the mistress, he answered for the maid who was under obligations to him. It is she who will give you this letter, and you can give her your reply. This assistance will hardly be of use to us, if, as Monsieur de Valmont believes, you leave immediately for the country, but then it will be he himself who will serve us. The lady to whom you are going is his kinswoman. He will take advantage of this pretext to repair thither at the same time that you do, and it will be through him that our mutual correspondence will pass. He assures me even that if you will let yourself be guided by him, he will procure us the means of meeting, without your running the risk of being in any way compromised. Now, my Cecile, if you love me, if you pity my misery, if, as I hope, you share my regret, will you refuse your confidence to a man who will become our guardian angel? Without him I should be reduced to the despair of being unable even to alleviate the grief I have caused you. It will finish, I hope, but promise me, my tender friend, not to abandon yourself overmuch to it, not to let it break you down. The idea of your grief is insupportable torture to me. I will give my life to make you happy. You know that well. May the certainty that you are adored carry some consolation to your soul. Mine has the need of your assurance that you pardon love for the ills it has made you suffer. Adieu, my Cecile. Adieu, my tender love. Paris, 9th of September, in 17...
End of section 13.